We begin today the Gemara on Daf Chav Tes Amud Beis, where it begins Hahu Da'am Le'Lechavre, towards the bottom of the Yamud, 7 lines up from the bottom of the Yamud. Hahu Da'am Le'Lechavre. Someone came to his friend and asks him, "My boy is Bahai Beisa. What are you doing in this house?" Okay, so here we're talking about someone that was the previous owner of this house, and this is what's called the Marakama. He's the previous owner, and he has Eidim for the fact that he's a Marakama. When it comes to Karka, any piece of land or a house, the halacha is that the one that's the presumptive owner is the Marakama, is the one that he has Eidim that he owned it before. He was the first owner, even if he's not physically occupying the land now. Until someone else that's living in the Karka now can show that he's here, can bring Eidim that he's here for 3 years, that's when he becomes the presumptive owner. That's when the chazakah goes over to the person that's in the Karka here. So this Marakama that has Eidim that he was the previous owner asks this guy that's occupying this house, "What are you doing here? Why are you in this house?" Amalei. So this person answers, "What do you mean? I bought this house from you. And in fact, I have Eidim that I've been here for 3 years." Okay, so now if that's the case, he's the presumptive owner, Chazakah. Amalei. So the Marakama answers back and says to him, I was living in an inner room of this house. This house is divided, different rooms, different parts of the house, and he's telling him that I was, all this time that you brought Eidos, that you had a chazakah, you were here occupying this house, but I was living in an inner room of this house. And not only that, the Rashba adds, and I would always walk through the place, the area of the house that you were living in. I would pass through here all the time, on a daily basis. So you're saying that you have Eidos that you lived there, but I was living here with you. I just allowed you to be here as a guest. So now I brought you in as a guest, and you're here as a guest by me for 3 years, and now you're claiming that you bought it from me. So that's just how we have a shaila. On one hand, he has Eidos for a chazakah, but on the other hand, the Marakam is claiming that it's not a good chazakah because you weren't here alone. Adarabah, you were here together with me. I'm the real owner. I lived here all the time, and I was walking through the space that you were in. So they came to Rav Nachman to ask him about this. On Malay, so Rav Nachman says to the machzik, to the buyer, the one that claims that he bought the house, Zil you have to go and prove what you claim that you're eating here, meaning that you're living here and that you lived here alone. You're going to have to bring Eidos to disprove the claim of the Marakama that he was here with you while you were living here. Amalei Rave, so Rav argues and this and says, Hachidine, is this the halacha? Hamaitzi, mechaveiroi, olavaraya. The one that wants to be maitzi, that wants to take away from his friend, he's the one that should have to go and prove his case. Since this one that's living here has Eidos that say that he was here for 3 years. And those Eidos, when they say that he was here 3 years, they're saying stam, that they saw him living here alone for 3 years. And they're not telling us that they saw him being here as a guest together with the other person that was walking through here all the time. They say stam that he was here 3 years. So therefore we're going to accept what those Eidos said, that there's a chazakah. Now if the Marakama wants to still claim that I was walking through here, adarabah, let him go and prove that he was the one that was walking through here all the time. Otherwise we accept the words of the Eidos that say that this person was living here alone. The assumption is that Mistame, when the Eidos said that they saw him living here, that they meant to say that they're saying that he was living here alone all this time. Okay, so that's the machlokes here regarding this case. So the Gemara now says on this that here we have this machlokes regarding this kind of situation. Who is the one that has the rights, and who's the one that's is going to be the onus of proof is going to be on him. But now the Rav Nachman. Here there's a contradiction. The Psaktin that Rav Nachman and Rava said here to another case also where there was an argument, and there Rava and Rav Nachman come out on the opposite side. Because there was a case with a person that says to his friend, Kol nichsi de bei bar sisin mizavninelach. All the properties of Bei Bar Sisin I'm selling to you. Now what he meant to say with that is that I have properties that I bought from this individual by the name of Bar Sisin. All those properties that I bought from Bar Sisin, I'm now selling to you. So now Havaya Hiyare, there was one property, the Have Mikri, the Bei Bar Sisin, which people would refer to it with had this name. It had the name of Bar Sisin. On Malay, so the buyer says to the seller, the seller that is says to the buyer, "Ha lav the bei bar sisin hu." This property here, even though it has this name of being a property of Bar Sisin, but it's not a property that I bought from Bar Sisin. It's just a name that it has. People refer to it as a property of Bar Sisin, but it really is not a property that ever belonged to Bar Sisin. This is a property that I inherited from my father, from my ancestors. There's no connection to Bar Sisin, and therefore this is not one of these properties that belong to you. On the other hand, the buyer is saying, what do you mean? Everybody refers to it as Bar Sisin. So this is a property that you bought together with all the assets of Bar Sisin, and therefore it's part of the sale. So okay, that's the argument over here. Is this property included in the sale or not? Oh, so Rav Nachman. So they came to Rav Nachman with this shaila. So how did Rav Nachman paskin here? The Rav Nachman says that the lekeach is right. We're going to assume that this property belongs to Bar Sisin because of the name it has, and therefore the lekeach can keep it. So right here you have a contradiction in Rav Nachman's opinion. Before, the Rav Nachman was saying that when you have a chazakah, which you have Eidim that say this guy lived there for 3 years, and if we're just going to take the words of those Eidim simply, stama, so then he has a chazakah. What did Rav Nachman say? That no, the buyer can't rely on those Eidim that say that he was there 3 years. He's going to have to bring additional proof that he was there alone and that no one else, this Marakama, did not walk through there this time. Over here, on the other hand, what's Rav Nachman saying? That when the buyer says that this is a property that has the name Bar Sisin, let's just follow the stama. If the stama is that this has the name Bar Sisin, we're not going to come and say, oh, maybe it's called Bar Sisin, but it's not really part of those assets of Bar Sisin. No, over here we are going to accept the stama that it's Bar Sisin. So he took the side of the buyer. On the other hand, Rava here also says the opposite. Over here Rava argues and says, do you know hachi? Is this the halacha? Hamaitzi mechaveiroi olavaraya. We follow the halacha of Hamaitzi mechaveiroi, the one that wants to take out this karka from the one that's occupying the karka right now. He's the one that has to prove that he's right. So since in this case the buyer is not yet occupying this land that's up in question here, this land that has the name Bar Sisin, the seller is still the one that has it in his possession. And the buyer is coming to the seller and saying to him, hey, why didn't you give me this land as well? But because the seller is the one that's occupying it now, so olavaraya, the buyer is going to have to prove his case. So the question over here is, Kashya, the Rava, ad Rava, here we have a contradiction in Rava's opinion. Before Rava said, that the seller or the ma'arer is the one that has to prove his case when he claims that he didn't sell. Over here it's the opposite. Over here Rava is saying that it's the buyer that's going to have to prove his case. And also Kashya, the Rav Nachman, and we have the contradiction in Rav Nachman's opinion. Over here Rav Nachman is taking the position of the buyer, saying that he's right, and before he took the position of the seller, the seller's right. Okay, so as I pointed out, the basis of the Gemara's question is the way the Achrayim explain it, that the question is when you have a certain mistama to rely on, a certain, it seems that this is the way it is, like by the case of Chazakah. This person is in the property, he brings Eidos that he was there for 3 years, but now there could be questions. Maybe the Marakama also walked through here as well. You have a property that has the name Bar Sisin, so the mistama assumption is that it's probably part of those assets of Bar Sisin. Now you have an argument that, oh, maybe it only had the name Bar Sisin, but it didn't really belong. Do we follow that stama or not? That's the basis of this contradiction the Gemara is asking here. So the Gemara answers, the Rava ad Rava loy kashya. Regarding Rava's opinion, it's not a question, because Hassam, in the previous case, or rather over here, the Gemara first starts with our case, the case over here of Bar Sisin. This case, the case over here is that the seller is still the one that's living in this land that now has this name of Bar Sisin. Since he's still living in this land, so now the lekeach that claims that it was part of the sale and you should give it to me, so he's going to be considered a maitzi. He's taking it away from the meicher that's still in the land over here. However, over here, in the case by the Shchuna Gavoy, where he has a chazakah, and now the Marakama comes and claims, I was walking through this place together with you, it's the Lekeach that has Eidos that he was there for 3 years, and the Marakama is just coming and claiming that he walked through, so therefore, we don't pay attention to that unless he can prove this. On the other hand, the Rav Nachman Nami Lekashya, the contradiction of Rav Nachman's opinion is also not a contradiction. Why not? So the Bach here adds, Hassam, over there, in this case of the land that has the name of Bar Sisin, Kivin, the Amalei, the Bay Bar Sisin. Since the seller says, I'm selling you all the assets that I bought from Bar Sisin. Umikri, the Bay Bar Sisin. And it has this name. So alei day Ramil ligluya de lav de bar sisin. So the seller is going to be the one that's going to have to prove that here you have a land that has the name, like all the other lands that he got from Bar Sisin. And now it sounds like you're making up a story. You're saying, oh, it also has a name Bar Sisin, but I never got it from Bar Sisin. I inherited this land from my father, but somehow it has this name Bar Sisin. In this case, Rav Nachman says that it's mistaver to say that the buyer is right, that its property has a name Bar Sisin because it belonged to Bar Sisin, and therefore it's his. But going back here to our case regarding Shchuna Gavoy, where a person has Eidos for his Chazakeh, but the Marakama comes and says, you were here as my guest. I was just allowing you to be here in this room, and I was walking through here all the time because I was living on the inside in my house. So in our case, the buyer, the machzik, is going to have to prove that he has a proper Chazakeh. Lo yehei elo the nokit shtada. Over here, there should be no less than if it would have been a case where the buyer has a document, a shtar that he bought this karka. Miloim amrina. Isn't the halacha regarding a shtar? Miloim amrina lei kayim shtarcha v'kum benichsi. What's the halacha of a shtar? Anytime you have a shtar that has two edim signed on it, you can't use that shtar until you verify that it's a kosher shtar. The seller can always come and say, this shtar is a forgery. You're going to have to bring a raya that it's a proper good shtar. Same thing over here. You brought eidos that you were living in this house for 3 years. Okay, but you're going to have to clarify, you're going to have to prove to us that you actually have a proper good chazakah, that you were there alone, and that the Marakama did not walk in there and is not giving you this room just as a guest to be here. So there's something integral that's missing here in the actual chazakah. So therefore, in this case, Rav Nachman says that it's the machzik that's going to have to prove his case that he had a real full chazakah.
With a star?
No, without a star, that is. He's going to have to bring Eidim that he was there alone, without this Marakama coming in and out all the time. Another story is Akta Gemara Hahu the Amalei Lechavre. A person says to his friend, my boy is Bahai Beisa. What are you doing in this house here? Amalei. So he answers him, Minoch Zavinta Vachaltiyash Nechazake. I bought it from you, and I'm here for 3 years. Amalei, so the Marakame that's challenging his ownership says to him, B'shuki b'roi havoi. I was in a faraway place. I was in a place that it wasn't possible for me to make any to protest against you being here in this field. As we saw before, a chazakah is only established if the Marakame is not moiche, does not protest against this person being here for 3 years. And furthermore, the Marakama has to be in a place where it's possible for him to be Meiche. So over here, as the Rashbam explains, what the Marakama is now claiming is, I was in a place that it was impossible for me to be Meiche. Even though we learned before in the Gemara that even if a Marakama is far away, he could be Meiche wherever he is, and the Machal will reach to the ears of the one that's in the field because of Chaver or Chaver Islay. The message gets back to him. But over here, what he's saying is, I was in a place where there was no caravans, there was nobody traveling from where I was to where you are over here in this house. So therefore, there was no point, there was no ability for me to be Meiche where I was. So therefore, I couldn't be Meiche all this time. So if I can't be Meiche, so then your Chazakah is not a Chazakah. Amalei. So now, but the machzik, the one that's in this house for 3 years, says to him, I have edus, the chol shata avasas lasan yemen, that every year, once a year, for 30 days, you would come back here to the city. So you were here, and you did have time to be meiche, and you were not meiche, even though you were back here in the city every year for 30 days. Amalei, so the Ma'ara says to him, but lasan yemen, those 30 days that I used to come back here to the city, why was I here? And those 30 days I was here because there was a business trip, and there was a big marketplace, and there was a jewelry show or a car show, whatever it is. He was here very specifically for a certain reason, and he was busy over there with his business, and he had no time to make any macha. Or the Rashbam actually says, it's not only that he had no time to make a macha, but he could say, because I was busy with my business, I never heard about the fact that you were occupying my house. I have a different house in the city that I was living in while I was here back on this business trip but the second house that I owned that you're living in, the news about the fact that you're occupying my house didn't even get to me. That's how busy he was with his work. So therefore, again, his taina is that your chazakah is not a chazakah because I was in a place and in a situation where I never had a chance to be meiche. So in such a case, you can't establish a chazakah. So Rava says about this, Avidinish, yeah, it is something which could be, it's common, the chol klas niyamin, that a person could be back here in this city, where this house is, but that all 30 days, tarid b'shukeh. He's so occupied in his business that he didn't even hear about the fact that someone is living in his second house, and therefore he didn't have a chance to be moichel. So there's no chazakah here. Another story, the Gemara says, a person says to his friend, my boy is pahayara. What are you doing in this land here? It belongs to me. So he answers him, I didn't buy it from you, true, but I bought this land from somebody else. And that person told me that he bought it from you. That's the case here. Okay, so now the story of this case here is, this case is a little bit different than the previous cases we had, because as the Rashbam points out, you see here from the Gemara, from the continuation of the Gemara, that in this case, the Ma'ar, the one that's challenging the ownership of the one that's occupying this land, is not a person that has edus to prove that he was the Marakama, that he was the previous owner. We have no idea who he is. He comes out of the blue saying, what are you doing in this field that belongs to me? Does he have any proof that he was the previous owner here? And based on that, he's challenging the ownership of the guy that's living there now? No, he has no proof at all that he was the Marakama. Right, now the person that's occupying the field, so in the Pshat of the Gemara here, he doesn't have any chazaki either. Elamai, what is he saying? I didn't buy it from you. I bought it from someone else that told me that he bought it from you. So who over here wins this din Torah? If you think about it, none of them really have any basis to claim any ownership here. The Marakama has no edus that he ever was a Marakama. He's really not a Marakama. He's just coming and being Ma'ara. He's just challenging the ownership of the guy that's in the field. The guy that's in the field now is there, and he's there without a chazakah. And what is this taina? I bought it from someone else, and he told me that he bought it from you. So what happens now? So Malay, so the Ma'ara, the ones that's challenging the ownership of the guy in the field, says to him, At lav kamaydis, aren't you admitting the high are didihi, that this land there belonged originally to me? And va'at loizavintaminoy, and you did not buy this field from me. So if that's the case, zil, leave this field. Lav bal dvarim bidiyah. You're not someone that can come and argue with me regarding the ownership of this field. So he's saying to him, the point, so the way the Rashbam explains this, the way the Rishonim explain this, what's happening over here is, even though the Marakama, or rather, let's call him the Ma'arer, he's not a Marakama, he has no edus that he ever was the Marakama, but this person that's coming and being Ma'arer, so now the one that's occupying the field, when he says, I bought it from someone else that bought it from you, he's telling him, yeah, I know it once belonged to you. I'm admitting that it did once belong to you. However, I didn't buy it from you, but I bought it from someone else that told me that he bought it from you. So now, that's not going to work. Once you were made that it did belong to this ma'ara, that he was the marakame, so now you can't say that you bought it from someone else, and even if you have a shtar, that you actually bought it from that someone else. But that someone else that you bought it from, how do you know that someone else you bought it from legitimately bought it from this ma'ara, from this person that you were just made that he's the marakame? You're saying, he told me that he bought it from you. But how do you know that he actually bought it from him? So once you made it that it belonged to that guy, and now you're saying that you did not buy it from him, you bought it from someone else just because he told you so, that's what's called a chazakeh she'ein imataina. Just like if you were in a karka and you come and say, I'm here because I'm here. No one ever kicked me out. So that's not a chazakah, as we learned already before. Over here as well, if you're coming and saying that you have a chazakah here because you bought it from someone else that told me that he bought it from you, so what, that guy told it to you? He told you. But how do you know that person was a legitimate seller? Maybe he was Stam Ganef. That's the point here. Now, the Rashbam points out there's one detail. If you change this one detail of the story, then the one that's occupying the field would actually win this, would win the din Torah. And that is, if you would say that Meplanyi Zaventa, I bought it from that person, and I can verify, I know for a fact that person that I bought it from you. In front of me, I saw that he bought it from you.
How do you know?
Or, well, he was there. He says, I was there when he bought it from you. Or, a little differently, if he would say that this person that I bought it from, I know for a fact that he lived there at least for one day, and after that, he sold it to me. In such a case, then Bezdin would taina and say that the person that the one that's occupying the field now bought it from is probably a rightful buyer. There's a halacha of taninon that when you buy a karka from someone, and now someone else comes to challenge the ownership of the seller, Bezdin will taina for the buyer to say that no, he's probably a legitimate seller, because otherwise anybody can just take advantage of any buyer that buys a field from someone and then someone else comes and challenges the whole sale here and everything falls apart. You can't make business this way. So there's a din of tanina. But over here, the reason why in this case he's going to lose the din taita is because he didn't say that I know for a fact that this person I bought it from was there for a day, or that I saw him buying it from you, from the one that he admitted was the original owner. He's just saying, Omali, he told me. So what he told you? So if he just told you, that's nothing, that's worthless. So therefore, so as I mentioned, the Gemara Pashtus is speaking about a case where he has no chazaka, he was not there 3 years. But the Rashbam says, even if he was there 3 years, it doesn't matter. It's a chazaka she'ein ima taina. This is a chazaka you hear, and you don't have a proper taina to back up who you bought it from. So the Gemara says, so Rava said about this, Dina Kamale. He's right. The Ma'arer here in this case is saying a right thing, that you're admitting that I was the first owner, and now you're just claiming that you bought it from someone else that told you that he bought it from me. So he told you. He sold you the Brooklyn Bridge. It doesn't help anything. So therefore you have no chazaka. Another story, the Gemara says, a person said to his friend, my bias bahayara. What are you doing over here in this field? Amalei. So he answers them, similar to the previous case, I bought it from someone else this is the same like the previous case. The Gemara doesn't finish off the whole story here, but I bought it from someone else that told me that he bought it from you. And I'm here in this field for 3 years. Amalei, so the Ma'ara says to him, you bought it from that person that said that he bought it from me? That person is a gazlan. He didn't buy it from me. That person stole it from me. And so we already saw in the previous story here that in such a case, the Ma'ara wins. Because just because you're saying that person told you that he bought it from me, there's no validity to that. He's a gazlan. But over here though, the Machzik argues back and says, Amalei, but for Isli Sadi, I have Eidos, the Asoi, the Imlichi Bach, that I came and I consulted with you whether I should buy this field from this seller. Va'amritli, and you told me, Zil Zaven, go buy this field from him. So it's the very fact that you told me to go buy it means that you're validating that this person that I'm buying it from him is not just a gazlan. Why did you give me this advice? Now you're coming and saying that person that I'm buying it from stole it from you. Why did you tell me to buy it from him? Amalei. So the Ma'ara comes and says, no, the only reason I gave you this advice is, and here the Gemara uses the expression that it says in another place, Hasheni noyachli harishin koshe meno. It's because the second person, in other words, you, I thought to myself, I'll have an easier time to deal with you, to get my field back from you, than to get it back from the person that you bought it from. This person you bought it from was a gazlan. He stole it from me. But he was a very tough guy. I couldn't deal with him. It was very hard for me to get this karka out of him. So when you came to consult with me whether to buy this field, I told you, yes, go ahead and buy it. So now I'll have to deal with you and I'll have a much easier time. That's the only reason I told you to buy it. So don't use that against me as a proof that I actually admitted that it's not mine. So Rava said about this, Dina Kamale. This claim of the Ma'ara is it's a good argument. Yeah, he only gave this advice because he wanted to have an easier time. It's no proof that it didn't belong to him. So the Gemara says, Kaman, according to whose opinion this is called Ka'admai. This is like the opinion of Admai, where there's a Mishnah in Ksubis that says a similar story. The Mishnah there says, Ha'ayrir ala sada, person that comes and challenges the ownership of a field that someone is occupying. And while he's challenging the ownership of it, there is a document where this person himself signed on it, that signed on this document as an aid for the acquisition of this field. How can he now argue and say that it doesn't belong to this person if he was a witness that signed in the document for the acquisition of this field? So Admin says the fact that he signed on it doesn't mean anything. He says the only reason I testified for that is because I wanted the sale to go through so I could deal with the second person, which is easier for me to get it back from him than the first person that I had a tough time with. But the Chachamim say, no, now you lost your ability, your rights to be able to claim that it belongs to you. You're a witness that signed on a document that it belongs to someone else. So we clearly see that Chachamim say that once you sign a document, you can't later say this taina, the second guy's easier for me to deal with. But the Gemara says regarding our case, afilit teimer Rabbanan. I can say that over here, even the Rabbanan would agree to the psak din of Rava. Why? Because Hassam, Ovidle Maisa, over there, this person went and signed the document. He's not giving advice. He went and signed the document that it belongs to someone else. Over there, Chachamim say, you can't later come and say, I only did that because I wanted to deal with the second guy. Aval hacha dibura. Over here, it's just words. He consulted with you and you gave him advice to go and buy it. The fact that you gave advice for him to buy it, that's something that it happens that a person gives this advice, even if he really plans on taking it back afterwards, he's going to give this advice. So therefore, in our case, even the Rabbanan would agree that this person has no proper chazaka in it, he has no proper taina. He gave him advice to buy it, that's meaningless. That's just words, because he only said it because he wanted to be able to deal with him, to get it back from him. Another story says the Gemara, a person says to his friend, my boy is pahayara. What are you doing here in this field? So he answers him, I bought it from someone else, and I'm here for 3 years. I have already a chazaka being here for 3 years. So he says to him, that person that you bought it from, he stole it from me. Again, all these stories are the same situation here. It's just that person you bought it from was the Gazlan. But he says to him, but va'isli sadi, I have edim, the osis be'urte, va'amdli zavna nali. You came to me yesterday, you came to me last night, and you told me, buy this field for me. So you pushed me to go and buy this field from that person for you. And now you're coming and saying that the person that I bought it from is a Gazlan. So the Ma'ar says, the only reason I told you buy it for me is because I said to myself, is ben dinoi. I'm ready to buy and pay for something that's really rightfully mine. I'm ready to do that. Even, in other words, this person is saying to himself, instead of me going to a court and argue it out in a court in Bezdin, where it's complicated for me to prove that it's mine, I'm ready to pay the price for it and let me get back the property that belongs to me. So that's the only reason why I gave you why I asked you to buy it for my sake. So Rava said, it does happen that a person would want to buy something that rightfully belongs to him, and therefore the fact that I told you yesterday to buy it for me doesn't prove that I'm not the rightful owner. Okay, but now obviously he changed his mind. He decided that he wants to take back his field without having to pay that money. So therefore, if the one that's being machzik in the karka has no proper chazaka, he has no proper taina that it's his. He's saying, I bought it from someone else, I bought it from you, and that's not a proper taina at all, so he won't have a chazaka. Another story, the last story for today, the Gemara says, person says to his friend, my boy is pahayara, what are you doing here in this field? So he answers him, I bought it from so-and-so, and I'm here for 3 years. I have a chazaka in this place for 3 years. So the Ma'ara says to this person that you're claiming that you bought it from that individual. Now here, in this case of the Gemara, when he says that he bought it from that individual, it's talking about that the seller is the verified owner. We know for a fact that this seller that he bought it from is the Marakame, he was a rightful owner. But the Ma'ara comes and argues back and says, but v'hana kitne shtare, I have a document, the Zavni Lemine, that I bought it from that person, that you say you bought it from, Arba Shani. I bought it from him 4 years ago. So what he's saying to the person that's occupying this land is, you're claiming that you have a chazakah, that you bought it from that individual and you're here for 3 years, but I bought it from him 4 years ago. I have a shtar that I bought it a year before you. So you were here 3 years, it's worthless. I have a shtar that I bought it before you. So the person that's occupying this property says back to the Ma'are, Mi savres shnei chazaket tlas shani kamina. Do you think when I said that I was here, I meant to say that I was here just for 3 years? I said I had a chazakeh. Chazakeh, now the minimum of a chazakeh to establish the presumptive ownership, that's 3 years. Do you think that I meant to say 3 years? Shnei chazaket tuva kamina. What I meant to say is that I'm here for many years. So you're saying that you bought it from him 4 years ago? You have a shtar that you bought it from the rightful owner, the seller. 4 years ago? I bought it from him much before that. When I said 3 years, I didn't mean just 3 years. I meant much before you. Okay, so the question is, can he now change his taina? As we'll see in the continuation, the Gemara in the Flamar Aleph talks about a person changing his taina. Once you say one taina in Bezdin, you can't then afterwards come back and change your taina. That's called tayin v'chayzev v'tayin. So over here, though, what this person is saying is, when I said stam, that I have a chazakeh, It never meant just 3 years. You misunderstood me. When I said stam chazakeh, I used the term chazakeh, which is a minimum of 3 years, but I didn't mean 3 years. I didn't know I had to specify exactly what kind of chazakeh I have. I didn't realize that you have a shtar of 4 years, that I have to make it clear that my chazakeh is longer than 3 years. But now that I see that you have a shtar that you bought it 4 years ago, so let me tell you what I meant. I'm here much more than that. So I bought it before you. So Amar Rava says that this taina of the machzik is right. Avidi inshi the karu l'shnei tu v'shnei chazakeh. It is common in the language of people when a person says that I have a chazakeh, that he doesn't just mean 3 years. 3 years is the minimum, but he meant to say that he's here for many years, and therefore he has that right. And now he's not changing his previous taina. He can come now and say that my chazakeh was longer than that, and therefore I bought it before the other person. This is all with eidos here, just to clarify. If he's coming and saying that he was there longer, he's going to have to bring eidos for all that time that he was there. Rashbam brings a few opinions about this, but the Rashbam says that over here, whatever, if he's going to say he was there for a longer period of time, he has to bring eidos for this, but that he was there for that period of time. But the chiddush over here is that he's not considered to be a tayin v'chayzer v'tayin, that he's not changing his tayin, because that's what he meant originally, that he's there much longer. Now the Gemara clarifies, when he says he was there before this person that bought the karka with a shtar 4 years ago, and now he claims that he was there before him. How much before him is this? Hanimili, when is this going to work? Only if he comes and claims the achla sheva, that he was there and he was in this field for 7 years. To kadem chazake dahai l'shtara dahach. So, but then what that means is that you already established, if this person says that he has a shtar, that he bought it from this seller 4 years ago, and you're now saying that you had a chazake for 7 years, so you already established a chazake in this place for 3 years before this person got a shtar from that seller that he's selling it to him. Aval, shis, but if this person that's being machzik in the karka now is only there for 6 years, so then what does that mean? If you were only there for 6 years, so that means that 2 years after you were occupying this property, that seller that you bought it from went and sold it to someone else with a shtar. He gives someone else a shtar that I'm selling it to someone else, not to the person that's occupying this field. So then there's no greater protest against you, against your chazakeh in this field. You could never establish a chazakeh unless the marakame is not ma'ara and is not meiche on your occupying of this field. So if you're going to claim that you bought it before this person that bought it with a shtar from that seller you bought it from, but you were only there for 2 years, and then after those 2 years, that seller sold it to someone else with a shtar, what was that seller really saying when he's selling it to someone else with a shtar? What he's saying is, this guy that's occupying the field, it doesn't belong to him. I'm selling it to someone else because it's still mine. I never sold it to him. He's just a squatter. He's occupying this place. So in order for you to be able to claim that I have a chazakah that proves my ownership before you bought it with a shtar 4 years ago, you had to have established a chazakah for 3 years. So that means you were here already for 7 years, and therefore you established your chazakah 3 years unchallenged without any macha. Then you can come and claim that you own it, you bought it before him, and you'll have a proper chazakah.